I follow this guy on Instagram. I don't really follow him. He keeps popping up. I don't understand how the algorithm works. I haven't pressed follow. In fact, I'm trying to get away from him a little bit, but he keeps popping up, his videos. His name's William Hansen. His handle or username, I'm not very good at the social media. His username is William Hansen Etiquette. And his whole thing is teaching, quote unquote, proper etiquette in a variety of situations. From the order in which we should get on and off elevators, to how to eat a cinnamon bun. I don't usually think about it much, but it turns out the answer is either with your fingers or with a fork. Yeah, I know, try that. I will say I find him to be a little much. Dare I say pretentious from the bima, but I do think that's part of his whole shtick. Now, I've vowed to take none of his advice, but I can't stop watching his videos. I noticed this week he posted a video about saying thank you to servers in restaurants. A whole video just about this one super specific interaction, and it had thousands of views, likes, and comments. Saying thank you in restaurants is vital, he opens, but how often should you say it? Now, I wonder if we all haven't had this happen. If you haven't, don't tell me. Sitting at a restaurant, maybe someone comes to drop off a dish, so I say thank you. Then while they're at the table, maybe they clear something away and I say, oh, thank you. And we think they're walking away, but then, they fill up our water, and here I am saying, oh, thank you so much. We don't want to seem impolite, God forbid. But at this point, we've said thank you to the same person 3 times in 30 seconds. And okay, we're not impolite, but maybe we feel a little silly. We're so worried. I know, we're so worried about saying thank you appropriately to the right people at the right time, that thousands and thousands of people watched this video from this goofball on Instagram for advice. And so I wonder what it is about showing gratitude that feels so high stakes. Our Parsha this week offers no helpful advice in answering this question. We'll talk about it anyway. Our Torah portion, Parshat Tzav, describes 5 different categories of korbanot, which are actually repetition from last week. Korbanot, or sacrifices, offerings to God. Olah, mincha, shlamim, chatat, and asham. The burnt offering, a flour, F-L-O-U-R, flour offering, peace offering, sin offering, and a guilt offering. Each of these sacrifices, each of these offerings, as we can imagine, are meant to be brought at different times, in different seasons or different situations. And depending on the situation, the Israelites were chayav, they were required to bring these different offerings, except for the shlamim, which is voluntary. The Torah description continues laying out the animals and the breads and the items that we need to bring for each of these. And it explains there's a type of shlamim called a korban todah, or zevach todah, an offering of thanks, that people can offer when they are so moved. The Talmud in Masechet Brachot outlines 4 people who should offer the korban todah. One who returns from travel at sea, one who returns from a journey in the wilderness, one who is released from prison, and one who recovers from an illness. But wait. In a comment on our Parsha, Rashi points out this question that we all may be wondering: how can a voluntary offering be required for some people? Because the Talmud relates there in Masechet Brachot, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Arba'at Tzrichin lehodot. Rav Yehuda said, that Rav said, these 4 people, tzrichin, lehodot. They're not chayav, obligated. They just sarich. They have to. It's not that they have to, it's that they have to. How can this be? It feels very Jewish. Rabbi Lawrence Zierler writes that we should understand the Zevach Todah, the offering of thanks, as a moral requirement rather than a legal one. It may be that the Korban Todah is not a halachic obligation. We're not wrong or transgressing if we miss an opportunity to show our thanks. But it is the right thing to do. Rabbi Yoshiyahu Pinto, a Syrian commentator, wrote that it's no mere Torah obligation. Rather, those delivered must feel an inner urge to thank the Lord for his gracious love. It's not merely a Torah obligation. Sounds like somehow it's even more than that. There's something about gratitude, about saying thank you, that doesn't fit in the rest of our tradition's understanding of obligation and exemption. Now you may think, okay, what are we really talking about here? Saying thank you? Perhaps it feels basic, juvenile even. We learn as young children, of course, we should say thank you. But there's something in our tradition that separates thanks from every other action. Psychologist Dr. Tiffany Malachi wrote that the feeling of gratitude involves two stages. First, the acknowledgement of goodness in one's life, that we've received something that gratifies us or experienced something that gratifies us. The second stage is recognizing that this goodness exists outside of the self. One can be grateful to the Creator, to animals, to other people, but not really to oneself. At this second stage, we recognize the goodness in our lives and who to thank for it. Unlike other offerings, which are mostly between us and God, the Zevach Todah, the Korban Todah, the offering of thanks, is deeply relational, an experience that happens between us and the people around us. We learned in our Torah reading that the thanks offering, unlike its counterparts, has to be consumed, it has to be eaten on the same day that it's offered. With other offerings we read, sometimes we see they had 3 days to eat it all, or longer in some cases. The Abarbanel in 15th century Spain noted that since the meat had to be finished and the loaves of bread that made up the thanks offering had to be finished that day, the offerer was encouraged to invite relatives and friends and neighbors to eat and to celebrate together. Of course, they would be curious to know the reason for the celebration, and the one making the offering would have the opportunity to share the great wonders of God that precipitated this showing of gratitude. If ancient Jews had had more time to eat and clean up and deal with this offering, perhaps they wouldn't have brought all their neighbors to join them, which means they would not have had the opportunity to share these stories of God's greatness, or the stories of whatever it was they were so grateful for. It seems that the Korban Todah is not only service of God, but service of the community too. A 2010 study from Dr. Alex M. Wood and others stated that gratitude appears to have a domino effect. If a person experiences gratitude, they're more likely to recognize the help and later reciprocate that help. People who are thanked are presumably more apt to extend help to others in the future. So yes, we really are just talking about a skill and a concept that we learned as toddlers. But we can see the Jewish tradition has taken on this idea of saying thank you. And our Parsha explains just how important it is in building community and strengthening relationships. And so maybe it's okay to over-thank someone. Maybe it's not silly to say thank you to the same person twice or 3 times in a minute. The phrase thank you is not only a potentially clumsy, societally expected going through the motions, but it's a way in which we connect deeply to that which lives around us. And so may we always feel and share gratitude to God, to servers in restaurants, to everyone we meet. Not because we're chayav, legally obligated, but because we feel so moved. Because we understand the difference and the impact it can make not only in our own lives, but to those we are thanking and, in fact, to the world around us. May we learn from our ancestors and offer thanks in every moment. Shabbat Shalom.